The grand chamber of the Galactic Council floated in the darkness of space. A massive ring of metal and light orbiting the neutral world of Axis Prime. Inside its gleaming halls, representatives from 12 alien species sat in their designated seats, arranged in a perfect circle around the central platform. The air hummed with translation devices, turning a dozen different languages into something everyone could understand. Teeman Park stood alone in the center of that circle, his hands bound behind his back with energy restraints that glowed a soft blue. He was a merchant, nothing more. For 15 years, he had traveled between the stars, buying and selling goods, making honest trades. His ship, the Morning Star, carried simple things like textiles, food preservatives, and entertainment devices. He had a wife back on Earth, 2 children who attended school in Bizan. He was supposed to be home 3 weeks ago for his daughter's birthday. Now he stood accused of crimes he did not commit. Yuna Kim paced before the council, her black suit crisp and formal, her voice steady despite the rage burning in her chest. She was Earth's ambassador, chosen because she spoke 7 alien languages and had spent 20 years building relationships across the galaxy. None of that mattered now. Honorable council members, Yuna said, holding up a data tablet. The evidence clearly shows tampering. The restricted technology found in Captain Park's cargo hold was planted there during his refueling stop at Vrexo Station. We have security footage showing Vrexian operatives accessing his ship. We have testimony from dock workers who witnessed the setup. This is a conspiracy designed to frame an innocent man. Chancellor Voth, leader of the Vrexian delegation, rose from his seat. He was tall and reptilian, his scales a deep purple that shimmered under the chamber lights. His eyes were cold, calculating. The human speaks of conspiracy, yet offers only excuses. The technology was found. The law is clear. Restricted items cannot be transported to developing worlds. The penalty is death. Yuna turned to face him directly. The penalty assumes guilt. You cannot execute a man based on planted evidence. We have no proof the evidence was planted, said Speaker Quilnath of the Kalari Collective. The Kalari spoke as one, thousands of minds connected in a hive network. Their voice echoed strangely, overlapping and harmonious. We have only the human's word against physical reality. Then examine the security footage, Yuna insisted, uploading the files to the Council's shared network. Look at the timestamps. See the unauthorized access. The Luminarch representative, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline shell, pulsed with soft light. We have reviewed your evidence, Ambassador Kim. It is inconclusive. The footage could be altered. Human technology is known for digital manipulation. Yuna felt her stomach drop. They had already made their decision. This was not a trial. It was a performance. Tammin stood quietly, watching the proceedings with sad eyes. He had known from the moment they arrested him that this would be the outcome. The Council did not like humans. Earth had joined galactic society only 70 years ago, after humanity developed faster than light travel on their own. The elder species resented that. They believed humans were dangerous, unpredictable, too aggressive for civilized space, that making an example of one human merchant would send a message. Stay in your place. Know your role. Do not challenge the old order. I call for a vote, Chancellor Voth announced, his voice carrying across the chamber with practiced authority. All in favor of upholding the guilty verdict and proceeding with the execution. One by one, the alien representatives activated their voting crystals. Blue lights appeared above their seats. Guilty, guilty, guilty. The Kalari voted guilty. The Luminarchs voted guilty. The insectoid Klavan voted guilty. Even species that Yuna thought were friendly to Earth, that had signed trade agreements and cultural exchanges, voted guilty. 12 votes. 12 blue lights. Yuna looked at Timon, and he looked back at her. He smiled, just a little. Tell my family I love them, he said quietly. This council cannot stand, Yuna said, her voice shaking now, not with fear but with fury. You execute an innocent man to prove a political point. Earth will not forget this. Earth is young, Speaker Kulnath replied. Perhaps this lesson will teach your species humility. Chancellor Voth walked down from his platform, carrying a small device in his clawed hand. It was a molecular disintegrator, a weapon banned in warfare but permitted for council executions. He approached Tamon slowly, savoring the moment. Cameras from 100 news networks recorded everything. This execution would be broadcast across 4,000 worlds. The council wanted everyone to see what happened to those who broke their laws. Tamon stood straight, shoulders back. He would not beg. He would not give them the satisfaction of seeing him break. Any final words? Voth asked, though his tone suggested he did not care. Timon looked directly into the nearest camera. He thought of his wife, his children, his friends back home. He thought of all the humans scattered across the galaxy, working hard, trying to build a future among the stars. He thought of Earth itself, that beautiful blue world that had survived so much, that had united after centuries of war and division. Earth will remember this, Timon said clearly. Voth pressed the activation stud. The disintegrator hummed, building energy. Then it fired. Timon Park ceased to exist. One moment he was there, flesh and bone and thought. The next moment, nothing. Not even ash. The restraints that had held his wrists clattered to the floor, empty. Yuna stood frozen, her mind refusing to process what she had just witnessed. Around her, the council members returned to their seats, already moving on to the next item on their agenda. A man's life meant nothing to them. A human life meant even less. She activated her communication device, sending an encrypted message directly to Earth, to the president, to the military command. To everyone who needed to know. The message was simple. They have killed one of us. Send it home. Then she walked out of the council chamber. Behind her, the aliens continued their meeting, discussing trade regulations and border disputes. They had already forgotten about Timon Park. They would remember him soon enough, on Earth. In the city of Geneva, alarms began to sound in the United Earth Command Center. Military officers rushed to their stations. Admirals and generals received urgent summons. The president was woken from sleep and brought to the emergency council chambers. The footage of Timon's execution reached Earth 30 minutes later, traveling through quantum relays across hundreds of light years. It played on every news network. People watched in horror as one of their own was murdered in front of the galaxy. Protests erupted in every major city. Millions of people took to the streets, demanding justice, demanding action. The government buildings in Beijing, Lagos, New York, and São Paulo were surrounded by crowds carrying signs, chanting slogans, refusing to disperse. The message was clear and universal, spoken in 100 languages but meaning the same thing everywhere. Not one more. Never again. Make them pay. In his office, Admiral Jiho Choi stood at the window, looking out over the city. He had fought in the Third World War, back when humans killed each other over borders and resources and old hatreds. He thought those days were behind them. He thought humanity had evolved beyond such violence. But now, looking at the angry crowds below, seeing the grief and rage on their faces, he understood something fundamental. Humanity had not become peaceful. They had simply found a common cause. They had united not because war was wrong, but because they finally had something worth fighting for together. And now, someone had taken one of their own. Admiral Jiho picked up his secure phone and made a call. Begin fleet mobilization, he ordered. Authorization code Alpha 77. Wake up, everyone. Tell them to prepare for war. The officer on the other end hesitated. Sir, war with whom? Jiho looked at the footage of Timon's execution playing on his monitor. He watched Chancellor Voth press that button. He watched a good man disappear from existence. Everyone, he said. The United Earth Command Center in Geneva was built after the Third World War ended, constructed from the rubble of what was once the old United Nations building. Its walls were made of reinforced concrete mixed with melted-down weapons from every nation that had finally agreed to stop killing each other. It was a symbol of unity, of humanity's promise to never turn on itself again. Now, those walls contained fury. Admiral Jiho Choi stood before the Command Council, a gathering of the highest military officers and civilian leaders from every region of Earth. The room was packed. Generals from the African Federation sat beside admirals from the Pan-Asian Alliance. The European Strategic Command shared space with representatives from the American Union and the Southern Coalition. Every face showed the same expression: cold, controlled rage. The footage of Timon Park's execution played on the main screen for the third time. Some people still needed to see it to believe it. A human being erased from existence, while aliens watched and did nothing. While they smiled and moved on to their next meeting, President Yoon Ji-song stood at the podium, her hands gripping the edges tightly. She was 60 years old, had served as a diplomat for 30 years before being elected. She had dedicated her entire life to building bridges between Earth and the galactic community. She believed in cooperation and finding peaceful solutions, in the power of words over weapons. That belief died 36 hours ago, the moment Timon Park did. They want us to accept this, President Song said, her voice carrying across the silent room. The Galactic Council expects Earth to file a formal complaint, to go through their legal system, to wait decades for a review that will change nothing. They expect us to be reasonable. She paused, letting that word hang in the air. Reasonable, she repeated, and now her voice had an edge like broken glass. They murder our citizen without fair trial, without real evidence, without any respect for our sovereignty, and they expect us to be reasonable. Admiral Jiho watched the faces around the room. He saw politicians who normally argued about everything sitting in complete agreement. He saw military officers from nations that had fought wars against each other now nodding in unison. Timon's death had done what decades of peace treaties and unity campaigns could not. It had made humanity truly one people. I have sent official communication to the Galactic Council, President Song continued. I have demanded the immediate surrender of Chancellor Voth and all council members who voted for execution. I have given them 48 hours to comply. If they refuse, Earth will formally withdraw from the Galactic Accord and declare war. A murmur ran through the room, not of surprise, but of grim satisfaction. Madam President, said General Quaim from the African Federation, the Council controls 4,000 worlds. Their combined military forces number in the millions of ships. Earth has 15 colonial systems and maybe 6,000 combat-ready vessels. The mathematics are not favorable. The mathematics, President Song replied, assume a fair fight. Admiral Choi, please brief the Council on our actual capabilities. Jiho stepped forward, activating his tactical display. A holographic star map appeared above the conference table, showing Earth's territory in blue and Council space in red. The difference was staggering. Earth was a tiny dot in an ocean of red. Since first contact with alien species 70 years ago, Jiho began, Earth's military has maintained two separate development programs. The public program focused on defensive capabilities and exploration vessels. Everything we showed the galactic community was designed to make us look weak, harmless, new to space warfare. He pressed a button, and new icons appeared on the map. Shipyards hidden in asteroid fields. research stations in dead systems far from any traveled route, manufacturing facilities built inside hollow moons. The classified program, Jiho continued, has been developing weapons and tactics specifically designed to fight enemies with superior numbers and technology. We have assumed from day one that the galaxy would eventually try to put us in our place. Today, they proved us right. Colonel Minho Lee stood from his seat. He commanded the Experimental Stealth Division, the ships that officially did not exist. My forces have been running deep space exercises for 5 years. We have developed faster-than-light insertion techniques that can put our ships inside enemy systems without detection. We have weapons that violate several galactic conventions on warfare. We never signed those conventions, President Song noted. Exactly, ma'am. Captain Soman Han, the youngest fighter ace in Earth's military, raised her hand. What about civilian casualties? The Council worlds have billions of innocent people who had nothing to do with this decision. It was a good question, and Jiho respected her for asking it. Our targets will be military installations, government facilities, and infrastructure, he answered. We will avoid civilian casualties whenever possible. But make no mistake, this will be total war. The Council chose to escalate beyond diplomacy. We will respond in kind. Dr. Hyun-Woo Kang from the Advanced Weapons Division spoke up next. I can have quantum disruption devices ready in 72 hours. They will shut down enemy communications across entire sectors. I can also deploy the nanomachini swarms we have been developing. They are extremely effective against ships, but technically do not violate biological warfare restrictions. Because they are not biological, President Song said. Technically, Dr. Kang agreed with a slight smile. The meeting continued for 6 more hours. They discussed logistics, supply lines, civilian evacuations from the outer colonies, and contingency plans if the war went badly. They talked about allies who might support Earth and enemies who would definitely oppose them. They planned for every possibility, every scenario, every disaster. Finally, President Song called for a vote. All in favor of authorizing military action if the Council refuses our demands? Every hand went up. Not one dissent. Not one hesitation. Then it is decided, President Song said. We wait 48 hours. If the Council does not surrender those responsible for Teeman Park's murder, Earth goes to war. The room emptied slowly, officers returning to their commands, politicians preparing to address their people. Admiral Jiho remained behind with President Song. Are we doing the right thing? She asked quietly when they were alone. Jiho thought about that question. He thought about all the lives that would be lost in the coming war. He thought about the destruction, the grief, the long years of conflict ahead. Then he thought about Teeman Park, a merchant who just wanted to go home to his family. A good man who did nothing wrong, murdered to make a political point. I do not know if it is right, Jiho said honestly, but I know it is necessary. If we accept this, if we do nothing, then the galaxy will know that human lives are worthless. They will know they can kill us whenever convenient. Our children, our grandchildren, they will live in fear forever, always knowing that some alien council can erase them on a whim. President Song nodded slowly. Then we teach them that human lives matter. We teach them that we protect our own. Always, Jiho agreed. 40-8 hours passed. The Galactic Council sent no response. They did not surrender Chancellor Voth. They did not apologize. They did not even acknowledge Earth's ultimatum. To them, humanity was still young, still weak, still learning its place in the galaxy. They would learn their mistake soon enough. President Song appeared on every screen across Earth and its colonies. Billions of humans stopped what they were doing to watch. She stood behind her desk in the presidential office, the flag of United Earth behind her, her expression calm and resolved. My fellow humans, she began. 48 hours ago, I gave the Galactic Council an opportunity to make this right. They have chosen silence. They have chosen to ignore the murder of Teeman Park. They have chosen to show us that they believe human lives have no value. She paused, letting the weight of those words settle. Therefore, effective immediately, Earth formally withdraws from the Galactic Accord. We recognize no authority of the Council over our people or our territory. Furthermore, we declare a state of war against the Vrexian Empire and all Council species that participated in the execution of our citizen. Around the galaxy, on 4,000 worlds, aliens watched that broadcast. Most of them laughed. Some felt pity for the foolish young species about to be crushed. A few, the wiser ones, felt a cold touch of fear. We did not want this war, President Song continued. But we will not run from it. To every human across the stars, I say this: come home or find shelter. To our allies who stand with us, we offer gratitude and support. To our enemies, we offer one final chance. Surrender those responsible, or face the consequences. She leaned forward, looking directly into the camera. You wanted to teach humanity a lesson, she said softly. You wanted to show us our place. Very well. Class is now in session. The broadcast ended. On military bases across Earth and its colonies, sirens began to wail. Ships launched from hidden docks. Soldiers boarded transports. Weapons that had been built in secret were loaded onto vessels that did not exist in any official registry. Admiral Jiho stood on the bridge of the carrier Indomitable, watching Earth shrink behind them as they accelerated toward jump speed. All ships report ready, sir, his executive officer said. Then let us begin, Jiho ordered. Set course for Vrexos Prime. It is time the galaxy learned what happens when Vrexos Prime orbited a blue giant star in the heart of Vrexian territory. Surrounded by 6 defensive stations and patrolled by over 600 warships from a dozen different species. It was the most heavily defended world in Council space, protected by energy shields that could withstand a direct hit from a supernova. The Vrexians had built their empire on military strength, and their homeworld reflected that power. The defensive grid detected nothing unusual on the morning of the attack. Long-range sensors showed empty space for light years in every direction. Patrol ships reported all clear. The station commanders drank their morning stimulants and prepared for another boring day of routine monitoring. They never saw the humans coming. Colonel Minho Lee sat in the command chair of the stealth frigate Shadow of Terra, watching his tactical display with cold focus. His ship and 11 others, like it had been drifting through subspace for 3 weeks, moving slower than normal space would allow, invisible to every sensor the Council possessed. They had positioned themselves in the perfect formation, surrounding Vrexos Prime like a closing fist. All ships report ready, his communications officer whispered, though there was no need for quiet in the vacuum of space. Something about this moment demanded it. Minho checked the countdown timer. 30 seconds until the attack began. He thought about Teeman Park, a man he had never met but whose death had brought them all to this point. He thought about the message they were about to send to the galaxy. Weapons free, Minho ordered. All ships, to cloak and engage. Show them what humans do to murderers. 12 stealth carriers materialized inside the Vrexos system simultaneously, appearing from nothing like ghosts becoming solid. The defensive grid went insane. Alarms screaming across every channel of sensors suddenly registered massive warships that had not been there a second before. The Vrexian response was fast, but not fast enough. By the time their patrol ships began to move, human fighters were already launching. Hundreds of small, fast attack craft poured from the carriers like angry hornets from a disturbed nest. Captain Soman Han led Alpha Wing directly toward the nearest defensive station, her fighter's engines screaming as she pushed them past recommended speeds. Behind her, 20 more pilots followed in tight formation, their weapons armed and ready. "Target the shield generators," Soman ordered, her voice calm despite the adrenaline burning through her system. "Hit them with everything we have got." The Vrexian stations opened fire, massive energy cannons that could vaporize a normal ship with one shot. But human fighters were not normal. They were smaller, faster, and built with one purpose: survive long enough to deliver their payload. Soman's fighter twisted and rolled, dodging streams of plasma fire that turned the space around her into a deadly light show. Her heads-up display tracked 6 different incoming shots, computer systems calculating trajectories faster than any organic mind could follow. She trusted the machine, letting it guide her hands as she weaved through the barrage. Weapons lock acquired. Her targeting computer announced. "Fire," Soman said. The experimental kinetic plasma torpedoes launched from her fighter's weapons bay, accelerating to 70% the speed of light in less than a second. They were not pure energy like the weapons the Council used. They were solid matter wrapped in superheated plasma, combining the best of both approaches. The Vrexian shields were designed to deflect energy weapons. They did nothing against solid objects moving at relativistic speeds. The torpedoes punched through the shields like bullets through paper, slamming into the station's generator array with devastating force. Secondary explosions rippled across the structure as power systems overloaded and ruptured. The shield flickered once, twice, then collapsed completely. "Target down," someone reported. Station 1 shields are gone. Moving to Station 2. Across the system, similar scenes played out as human forces engaged every defensive installation simultaneously. The Vrexian Navy scrambled to respond. 600 warships moving to intercept the human carriers. Dr. Yimwu Kang watched from the science station aboard the carrier Dauntless, his fingers dancing across holographic controls as he initiated the quantum disruption protocol. Humanity had been studying galactic communication systems for 70 years, mapping their networks, finding their weaknesses. Now all that research paid off. "Deploying disruption package now," Yunwu announced. A pulse of corrupted quantum data spread through the Vrexian communication network like a virus, jumping from relay to relay faster than any firewall could stop it. Within seconds, every ship in the system lost contact with each other. Their coordination vanished. Orders could not be transmitted. Commanders could not communicate with their subordinates. The Vrexian fleet suddenly became 600 individual ships, each fighting alone, each making their own decisions without knowing what anyone else was doing. Admiral Geo Choi watched from the bridge of Indomitable as the battle unfolded exactly according to plan. Humans had spent decades studying galactic warfare tactics. They knew how Council species fought, how they coordinated, how they responded to threats. And humans had designed every aspect of this attack to counter those tactics. "Enemy Battle Group 7 is breaking formation," his tactical officer reported. "They are trying to retreat to the orbital shipyards." "Do not let them," Jiho ordered. "Deploy the nanomachine swarms." Small canisters launched from Indomitable's weapons bays, appearing harmless on sensors. They drifted toward the retreating Vrexian ships like floating debris. The Vrexians did not even notice them until it was too late. The canisters opened, releasing clouds of microscopic machines that humanity had spent 20 years perfecting. They were not biological, did not technically count as living organisms, but they were very, very good at their job. That the nanomachines infiltrated the Vrexian ships through their ventilation systems, through microscopic gaps in their hull plating, through any opening they could find. Once inside, they began to systematically disassemble everything they touched, breaking down metal and circuitry into component atoms. The ships did not explode. They simply came apart, piece by piece, until nothing remained but scattered molecules. It was clean, efficient, and absolutely terrifying to watch. Enemy vessels are disintegrating, the tactical officer said, his voice showing a hint of shock despite their training. All hands lost. Jiho felt nothing. These aliens had watched Teeman Park die and done nothing. They had voted for his execution. They deserved what came next. The battle for Rexos Prime lasted 16 hours. When it ended, 70% of the planet's orbital infrastructure was destroyed. The defensive stations were rubble. The shipyards where the Vrexian Navy built their warships were gone. 412 Council ships had been eliminated, their crews dead or captured. Human casualties: 47 fighters lost, 2 frigates damaged, 0 capital ships destroyed. Colonel Minho coordinated the final phase of the operation personally. Intelligence had located Chancellor Voth's palace ship attempting to flee the system, running at maximum speed toward the hyperspace jump point. Minho's wing intercepted it halfway there. "This is Colonel Minho Lee of the Earth Defense Force," he transmitted on an open channel. "Chancellor Voth, you are ordered to surrender your vessel immediately. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded." The response came in Voth's cold, arrogant voice. "Humans do not give orders to the Rexian Chancellor. You have committed an act of war that will see your entire species erased from existence. Withdraw now, and perhaps the Council will show mercy." Minho almost laughed, almost. Instead, he armed his weapon systems. "You murdered Teeman Park," Minho said quietly. "You pressed the button that erased him from existence. You smiled while you did it. Now I'm going to give you the same chance you gave him." "You would not dare," Voth snarled. "I am protected by galactic law. I have diplomatic immunity. You cannot touch me." "Teeman Park was protected by the same laws," Minho replied. "You did not care then. I do not care now. Last chance, Chancellor. Surrender or die." Voth's palace ship opened fire instead, its weapon systems lighting up the darkness with deadly intent. The shots went wide, the Vrexian gunners panicking. Their aim terrible. Minho's wing did not miss. 20 torpedoes struck the palace ship simultaneously, overwhelming its shields through sheer concentrated firepower. The vessel's hull cracked open like an egg, atmosphere venting into space in great frozen clouds. Secondary explosions tore through the interior, destroying life support, engines, everything. The ship drifted dead in space for exactly 4 seconds before the reactor went critical. The explosion was brief and brilliant, a small sun that burned bright and then faded to nothing. Chancellor Voth, the alien who had murdered a human to prove a point, became nothing more than scattered atoms. "Target destroyed," Minho reported flatly. "All wings returned to the carriers. Mission complete." Admiral Jiho watched the footage of the palace ship's destruction, recording every second. Then he opened a galactic broadcast, one that would reach every Council world, every species that had participated in Teeman's execution. "This is Admiral Jiho Choi of the United Earth Defense Force," he announced. "We have just concluded operations at Rexos Prime. The Vrexian orbital infrastructure has been eliminated." The war spread across 20 sectors like wildfire, consuming everything in its path. After the devastating attack on Rexos Prime, the Galactic Council finally understood that humanity was not going to back down. They mobilized their full military strength, calling upon ancient alliances and old debts. Fleets gathered from across known space, representing dozens of species who had never worked together before. The Kalari deployed their bioships, massive living vessels grown in orbital gardens over decades. The Luminarchs unleashed solar disruption weapons that could destabilize stars. The insectoid Klavan contributed swarms of drone ships, Millions of small craft controlled by hive mind. Coordination that made them nearly impossible to outmaneuver. Humanity was outnumbered 10,000 to 1. By every military calculation, Earth should have been crushed in the first month. But humans did not fight the way the wave was. Council expected. Commander Boris Shin sat in her command center beneath the surface of Mars, surrounded by holographic displays showing the entire war theater. She was a tactical genius, someone who saw patterns where others saw chaos, who understood that in war, the side that adapts fastest usually wins. They are still fighting like they did in the expansion wars 2,000 years ago, Boris said to her staff officers, pointing at the council fleet movements on her displays. Look at them. Massive formations, predictable patrol routes, supply convoys that follow the same hyperspace lanes every single time. They have not innovated in centuries. What do you recommend? General Taiyang asked. He was old-school military, accustomed to direct confrontation and decisive battles. This new style of warfare made him uncomfortable, but he trusted Boris' judgment. We refuse to engage on their terms, Boris said. No pitched battles. No fleet-on-fleet confrontations where their numbers give them advantage. Instead, we hit them where they are weak. Supply lines, communication relays, command centers. We make them afraid to move, afraid to coordinate, afraid to even communicate with each other. Over the next weeks, Boris' strategy proved devastatingly effective. Human strike teams appeared out of nowhere, destroyed their targets, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Council supply convoys simply disappeared in hyperspace, their ships never reaching their destinations. Communication networks failed across entire sectors, leaving council commanders isolated and blind. Engineering chief Daeho Park, Timon's younger brother, worked around the clock in the weapons development facilities on Luna. Grief had transformed him into something cold and focused. Every weapon he designed carried his brother's memory. Every innovation born from the need to make the council pay. The Hellfire Protocol is ready for deployment, Daeho announced during a tactical briefing with Admiral Jiho. I have improved the nanomochini swarms. They are faster now, harder to detect, more efficient at breaking down enemy ships. I can deploy them in hyperspace. Let them drift until they encounter council vessels. Do it, Jiho ordered without hesitation. Deploy them along every major trade route the council controls. Let them wonder which ship will be the next to simply fall apart around its crew. The nanomachine swarms became humanity's silent terror weapon. Council ships traveled through hyperspace and emerged as clouds of disconnected atoms. Crews vanished without distress calls, without warning, without even knowing they were under attack. The psychological impact was immense. Alien crews began refusing to board ships, terrified that they would be the next to disappear. But humanity was losing battles too. The Council's superior numbers eventually told. The colonies on Proxima Centauri fell after a 3-week siege, human defenders fighting to the last before being overwhelmed. The orbital stations around Neptune were destroyed in a massive assault that cost both sides thousands of lives. Earth's manufacturing capacity struggled to replace ships faster than they were being lost. Admiral Jiho stood in the war room, looking at casualty reports that grew longer every day. 60,000 humans dead so far. Entire colonies evacuated. Ships lost. Resources depleted. We cannot sustain this forever, General Taiyang said quietly. Our population is a fraction of theirs. Every soldier we lose is irreplaceable. Every ship takes months to build. Meanwhile, they can draft from thousands of worlds and manufacture replacements faster than we can destroy them. Then we need to change the equation, Jiho replied. We need allies. That task fell to Envoy Jiwan Yun, a diplomatic officer who had spent years building relationships with species on the edges of Council space. She traveled in secret to worlds that had suffered under Council rule. Species forced into subservient positions, their resources exploited, their cultures suppressed. She met with the Talic, a gentle species whose homeworld had been strip-mined for rare minerals. She spoke with the Werveri, warriors who had been subjugated by the Klavan and forced to fight in their wars. She contacted the Yolna, whose protests against Council policies had been violently suppressed. Earth offers you a choice, Jiwan said in meeting after secret meeting. Join us in fighting for your freedom. We will supply weapons, ships, training. We will recognize your sovereignty and treat you as equals. Or continue accepting Council domination and hope they eventually show mercy. It was not a hard sell. 17 species rose in rebellion, their uprisings coordinated with human military strikes. Suddenly, the Council faced not just one war, but dozens. Their attention fractured. Their forces spread thin, trying to maintain control over their crumbling empire. The war ground into its 8th month. Every day brought new battles, new casualties, new horrors. Space became a graveyard, full of drifting wreckage and frozen bodies. Trade routes collapsed. The galactic economy entered freefall. Stock markets on Council worlds crashed as investors realized that this war had no quick resolution. Captain Soman. Han led her fighter wing through another desperate battle over the mining colonies in the Deneb sector. They were outnumbered 5-1, protecting civilian transports trying to evacuate before Council forces arrived. Alpha Wing, form up on me, Soman ordered, her fighter weaving through incoming fire. We just need to buy them 10 more minutes. Her pilots responded with grim determination, each one knowing they probably would not survive this engagement. But those transports carried 40,000 civilians, families, children, people who deserved a chance to live. The Klavan drones swarmed around them like locusts, firing from every direction. Soman's wing fought back with everything they had, their weapons burning hot, their shields failing one by one. 2 fighters went down, then 4, then 7. Transports are clear. The evacuation coordinator finally transmitted. You are free to withdraw. What was left of Alpha Wing limped back to their carrier, half their number gone. Soman sat in her cockpit afterward, staring at the empty spaces where her wingmates used to be. Good people, friends, all dead because the Council had decided one human merchant needed to die. But the Klavan had lost 80 drones in that engagement. The mining colonies were evacuated successfully. The civilians survived. It was a victory, technically. It felt like defeat. Commander Bora analyzed the overall strategic situation from her command center on Mars. The numbers told a brutal story. Humanity had destroyed or captured over 15,000 Council ships. They had liberated 43 worlds. They had killed hundreds of thousands of enemy combatants, but Earth had lost 2,000 ships, 70,000 soldiers and civilians, and control of 6 colonial systems. The production facilities were running at maximum capacity, but could not keep up with losses. Food rationing had begun on Earth itself as agricultural worlds were cut off. Medical supplies were running low. We are winning the tactical battles, Bora said during a command conference with Admiral Jiho. But we are losing the strategic war. We simply do not have the resources to fight the entire Council to complete the feat. Eventually, we will run out of ships, soldiers, or ammunition. Probably all 3. How long do we have? Jiho asked. Bora ran calculations on her display. At current attrition rates? Maybe 8 more months before we cannot sustain offensive operations. 12 months before we can no longer defend our core systems. 18 months before Earth itself is threatened. Jiho nodded slowly, processing that information. Then, we need to force them to negotiate before that happens. We need to hurt them badly enough that peace becomes more attractive than continued war. Or we need them to fracture internally, Boris suggested. The Council has never faced coordinated resistance before. The alliance holding them together is built on assumptions of superiority and shared interests. If those assumptions break down, if the cost becomes too high, individual species might start making their own peace. That became humanity's strategy for the final phase of the campaign. Make the war so costly, so brutal, so endless that the Council simply could not justify continuing it. Every battle had to hurt them more than it hurt Earth. Every loss had to be unacceptable. Engineering Chief Deho developed new weapons specifically designed for maximum psychological impact. Nanoma-machine swarms that could be set to activate days after deployment, making every ship that survived a battle potentially compromised. Quantum mines that appeared randomly in hyperspace lanes, forcing Council fleets to travel at sublight speeds or risk sudden destruction. Communication viruses that turned enemy networks against themselves. Broadcasting false orders and conflict. Negotiation chamber floated in orbit above Rexos Prime. Constructed from the wreckage of the defensive stations that Earth had destroyed 8 months earlier. President Yoon Ji-song had chosen the location deliberately. She wanted every Council representative to see exactly what humanity was capable of when pushed too far. The chamber was simple, built from salvaged metal and transparent aluminum, offering an unobstructed view of the devastated Rexian homeworld below. Orbital shipyards still smoldered where human weapons had torn them apart. Debris fields sparkled in the light of the blue giant star. The planet's surface showed scars from kinetic bombardments that had struck military installations with surgical precision. Ambassador Yoona Kim, now promoted to Secretary of Interstellar Affairs, walked through the chamber's entrance with Admiral Jiho and 5 other human delegates. She had been there when Timon died. She had watched him disintegrate while the Council looked on with indifference. Now, she returned to finish what that moment had started. The Council representatives were already seated, looking uncomfortable and exhausted. The Luminarch delegation glowed with dim, uncertain light. The Kalari Collective seemed fractured, their usual unified voice showing hints of discord. Representatives from a dozen other species sat in silence. Many of them showing visible signs of stress thought they had come to end a war they could no longer afford to fight. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," said Speaker Quilnath of the Kalari, though their tone suggested the gratitude was forced. "The continued conflict serves neither our interests nor yours. Too much blood has been spilled. Too many lives lost. We believe it is time to discuss terms for ending hostilities." Yoona sat down across from them, her expression neutral. "You are correct that too much blood has been spilled. It began with one human merchant who did nothing wrong except exist in a galaxy that considered his life worthless. We acknowledge," the Luminarch representative pulsed, "that perhaps the execution of Captain Park was premature, that the evidence may have been insufficient, that mistakes were made." "Mistakes," Admiral Jiho repeated, his voice hard as iron. "You call murder a mistake. We call it a tragedy," Speaker Quilnath corrected. "One that both sides regret." Yoona leaned forward. "Before we discuss terms, I need to be clear about something. Earth did not start this war. We did not want this war. We asked for justice through proper channels. We gave you time to surrender those responsible. You chose silence. You chose to ignore us. Everything that followed is a consequence of that choice." The Council representatives shifted uncomfortably. They knew she was right, even if admitting it was painful. Nevertheless, the Luminarch said, the conflict must end. "We propose the following terms: immediate ceasefire, return to pre-war borders, reparations to be paid by both sides for damages incurred, and full reinstatement of Earth into the Galactic Council with guaranteed representation." It was a generous offer by galactic standards. It essentially gave Earth everything they had possessed before the war, plus permanent council membership and financial compensation. Yuna looked at the terms displayed on her tablet, then looked up at the alien delegates with an expression that made several of them flinch. "No," she said simply. Confusion rippled through the council delegation. "No," Speaker Quilmeth echoed. "You reject our terms? What more could you possibly want?" "Everything," Admiral Jiho said. "You seem to think we came here to negotiate a return to the way things were. You are mistaken. The old order is dead. We killed it when we killed Chancellor Voth. We buried it when we shattered your fleets. What we are here to discuss is what comes next." Yuna activated her own display, projecting human terms onto the chamber's central screen. The council representatives read them in growing shock and disbelief. "You cannot be serious," the Luminarch protested. "You demand the complete dissolution of the Galactic Council? The restructuring of all interstellar governance? The liberation of over 200 subjugated species? This is not negotiation. This is dictation." "You are correct," Yuna agreed. "We are dictating terms. You lost the right to negotiate as equals when you murdered Timon Park. You lost it again when you ignored our warnings. And you lost it a third time when you spent 8 months trying to crush us and failed." She stood, walking to the transparent wall overlooking Rexos Prime. The other delegates followed her gaze to the ruins below. "This was the Vrexian Empire's homeworld," Yuna said quietly. "The most defended planet in Council space. We destroyed its defenses in 16 hours. We killed Chancellor Voth. We crippled your most powerful military force. And that was just the beginning." She turned back to face them. "Over 8 months of war, we have destroyed 15,000 of your ships. We have liberated 43 worlds. We have armed and trained 17 species to fight for their own freedom. We have proven that your age, your technology, your numbers mean nothing against determination and tactical superiority. You have also lost 70,000 of your own people," Speaker Quilmeth pointed out. "Your colonies are damaged. Your economy is strained. Your resources are depleted. You cannot sustain this war much longer than we can." "You are absolutely right," Admiral Jiho agreed, surprising them. "We probably have less than a year before we run out of ships and ammunition. But here is what you are not considering. We do not care." He walked to stand beside Yuna. "Humanity has been through worse. We survived global wars that killed billions of our own people. We rebuilt from nuclear devastation. We united a planet full of nations that hated each other. We reached for the stars from the ashes of our worst moments. Compared to what we have survived, compared to what we have overcome, this war is just another obstacle." "You think we will surrender before you do?" the Luminarch asked. "I know you will," Jiho said with absolute certainty. "Because we are fighting for a principle that matters more than economic stability or territorial control. We are fighting to prove that human lives have value. That you cannot kill us without consequence. That we will burn everything down before we accept being treated as lesser beings." He activated his own display, showing fleet positions around the chamber. 300 human warships decloaked simultaneously, surrounding the negotiation station in a perfect sphere. "That fleet includes our new Dreadnought-class vessels," Jiho continued. "Built during the war using techniques and weapons that make our earlier ships look primitive. Each one can destroy a Council battleship in single combat. We have 50 of them. We can build more faster than you can replace your losses." The Council delegates stared at the display in growing horror. They had thought Earth was exhausted, running on fumes. Instead, humanity had been building up strength while bleeding the Council dry. "So here are our actual terms," Yuna said, her voice carrying the weight of 70,000 dead humans and all the grief and rage that came with them. The Galactic Council is dissolved effective immediately. A new democratic federation will be established with equal representation for all species, regardless of age or power. Every species currently enslaved or oppressed under Council law will be freed and given full sovereignty. A memorial fund will be established for Timon Park and all beings executed under Council tyranny. And Earth will maintain military superiority for the next century to ensure compliance with these terms. This is outrageous. The Cloven representative clicked in agitation. You demand we surrender all authority, restructure galactic civilization, and accept human military occupation? We would rather fight to the last ship. Then do it. Colonel Minho's voice came over the communication system from the fleet surrounding them. We are ready. My pilots are ready. We have enough weapons to finish what we started. Give the word, and Rexos Prime becomes a Toon World. Every Council homeworld follows. We will burn your civilizations to ash before we accept anything less than complete compliance. The silence in the chamber was absolute. The Council delegates looked at each other, seeing their own fear reflected in alien eyes. They had started this war believing humanity would submit or be crushed. Instead, they had created an enemy that would rather destroy everything than accept subjugation. We need time to consider, Speaker Quilnath said finally, their voice small and defeated. You have 1 hour, Una said. After that, we resume military operations. And this time, we will not stop until every Council world is either liberated or destroyed. The Council delegates withdrew to private chambers to debate. The arguments were fierce and desperate. Some species wanted to keep fighting. Others begged for peace at any price. The unity that had held the Council together for thousands of years had shattered completely. In the end, survival instinct won over pride. They returned to the negotiation chamber 57 minutes later. We accept your terms, the Luminarch representative said, their light dim with defeat. The Council will be dissolved. The new Federation will be established as you demand. Earth will have its memorial, its reparations, its military guarantees. And the subjugated species? Una pressed. Will be freed, Speaker Quilnath confirmed, though the words clearly caused them pain. All restrictions on their sovereignty will be lifted. Una looked at Admiral Jiho, who nodded once. Then we have an agreement. The war ends, Todd.